Hey, yeah, you. Let me ask you a question. Is this the America you want to live in? Yeah, me too. But I think there's change coming soon. We should check out the Papa Jeff's America podcast. What do you mean who? PG the OG. No, not original gangster. Old guy. Oh yeah, that Papa Jeff. Now you know what I'm talking about. Hey, why are we whispering? This is America. A person cannot be religious and be indifferent to other human beings' plight and suffering. Recorded live in Houston, Texas, welcome to the Papa Jeff's America podcast. We're continuing the conversation one podcast at a time. It's a conversation about what's going on in our world, politics, government, current world events, things that you want to talk about, with commentary, exhilarating guests, and what would a day be without Papa Jeff's classic old guy humor. But here's the real question. Is this the America you want to live in? So now, with one sort of kind of good eye, and definitely a face for radio, Mr. Here We Go himself, PG the OG, Papa Jeff Cameron. Hey everybody, it's me, Papa Jeff, PG the OG, and OG Radio is on the air. Welcome in. This is Papa Jeff's America. We are the internet podcast that talks about the things that you, America, wants to talk about. I am your host. Write down our phone number. You're going to need it, 281-940-6980, 281-940-6980. Call us. Text us with your thoughts and comments. OG Radio weather, high today of 92, overnight low of 72, currently under mostly cloudy skies and the occasional thunder shower. It's 92 degrees at the OG Studios near the George Bush Intercontinental Airport in Houston, Texas. Guys, this broadcast is our premiere interview with a great guest, Mr. Andrew Wellborn. This interview was recorded on Thursday, September the 3rd of 2020, and we hope you enjoy it as much as we enjoyed making it. So, my friends, here we go. Hey, everybody. We are here with my good friend, Andrew Wellborn. I have known Andrew since 2017. We met in Northeast California when I was living in Reno, Nevada, and we met, and him and his lovely bride, Lacey, amazing people. And what I didn't know about Andrew, we'll get to that for a minute. We know that he's a man of, he wears a lot of different hats. He's a man of much knowledge and much information for a, well, I'll say younger person. Everybody's younger to me, but he's done a lot. He still does a lot, and he's an amazing person. I think you guys are really going to enjoy it. Andrew is, I'll let him kind of toot his own horn here, but Andrew is a 25-year veteran of the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation. So the correctional system in the state of California. I've been around so long that it used to be the California Department of Corrections, and then one of those years back, they added the word rehabilitation to it, which we won't go there. Maybe that's a politically correct thing. I don't know, but that's a whole different thing. Andrew's a 25-year veteran there. He has a lot of experience there, a lot of experience in the Peace Officer Association. He has a musical background. He has his own radio show in Northeast California. And he has a couple of things that we definitely want to put in here, and we'll come up on toward the end of the interview here as well. But Andrew's show in Northeast California is called the 503 Report. You can check that out online. His music career, and you got to hear this guy sing, man. He is great. He has a clothing line as well called Born American Pride. You can find him at andrewwellborn.com. Follow him on his Facebook page as well. 503 Report, a Facebook page there. This guy, I'll tell you, it's going to take much more time than what we have. to discuss things, but we got a few talking points we want to go over. And so, dear friends and gentle people, Mr. Andrew Wellborn. Hi, Andrew. Thanks for coming on.
Hello, Mr. Papa Jeff Cameron's America. Thank you very much. It was great being here since you basically said everything. And we'll talk to you next time.
Good. I have all kinds of time to still upload because this one won't take very long at all.
You pretty much covered just about everything about me, man. I was like, wow, pretty impressive. And before we get going, first, let me congratulate you on doing the show. Let me congratulate you, first of all, for making the decision to do this. We were talking off air, and I remember even back in 2017, I was inviting you to come on to my program because I was like, man, first of all, you've got the voice and you have the knowledge. And I always thought that you'd be a great guest on our program. And then you mentioned that you were looking to do what you're doing here today. And it's just good. It's great that you're doing this. The hardest part about doing a program like this is making the decision to do it. And you made the decision to do it. Congratulations. And I'm honored to be here and to talk about whatever we're going to talk about. Who knows what we're going to talk about, which is pretty much how my program goes. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Let's have some fun.
Thank you. And you are definitely an inspiration to me. And I will say that one of the reasons that I actually did start doing this, and yeah, I was when I was in a different business, I was going to come on the program, and I remember that, and I was very excited about that. So now we get to do it just on a little bit different platform, and that's good. I'm here in Houston, Texas, and you actually you were born in Texas, yeah?
Yes, I was born just a little north, little town called Woodville, Texas, right there in Tyler County, which is just a short little. Just right above the Houston area, and grew up between Woodville, Texas, and Denton, Texas. And my father, he was in the building industry and the structural engineering business, and throughout Texas, and during that time period, during the oil industry, during the boom that was going on, he would go back and forth between the Dallas-Fort Worth area and, of course, the Houston area for work. And we spent a lot of time on the highways. And one of the greatest treats that we ever had was getting up in the morning and driving with him to Houston. And we'd go to the building sites. There's a lot of buildings that are downtown Houston. That's the skyscrapers, the high rises, that I remember as a young child actually being on the floors, having my hard hat as my father was working with the many companies that were building those buildings downtown Houston. And, as fate would have it, economies change, and resulting in the movement out here into the state of California. And just as a brief history, I came out in the state of California back in 1987, and I've been out here ever since, for a lot of reasons. And, but yeah, any chance I get to really talk to folks back home, any chance I get to go back home, which hasn't been a lot, but it's about to be a little bit more than the past, to get back home. Yeah, it's a good thing. I'm enjoying the opportunity to talk to the people and the folks down in that Houston area, and getting to know my fellow Texans once again.
Absolutely. And we definitely appreciate you coming on. There's a lot to talk about. We could go on for days and days and days. And so we kind of pick out the points that are, I will admit, we were going to do this interview several weeks back, and there's a lot going on in California, and here in Houston, we just dodged a bullet, so to speak, with Hurricane Laura, which moved her track away from us and unfortunately did quite a bit of damage in the Louisiana area and moving on up northeast. Mm-hmm. And we were actually scheduled to do this interview a couple of weeks back. And I went back and looked at my talking points, and I said, I got to change these talking points. That this narrative has changed 14 times since, we were going to talk before. And guys, just so for a little backstory, you guys that have followed my podcast since the beginning, I said in I believe it was the first episode that there was a good friend of mine that was originally from Texas and that schooled me in the ways of pronunciations and that it is Houston with a silent H. And this is the gentleman that did it. And I'm telling you, it's true. They found out real quick that I was definitely coming from Reno, Nevada, but I'm originally from Los Angeles, and I pronounced it humble, and they looked at me like, and they didn't say it right away, but they could tell that this guy's not from around here. Definitely not. So welcome to Houston, right?
Yeah, I had the same problem. I spent a little time in New Mexico, and I had the same issue when it came to enunciating words and some of the Spanish enunciations. Mm-hmm. And, it's just funny how quickly you get corrected regionally whenever you enunciate something that is improper. And hopefully people are polite about it. And, out here in California and in New Mexico, people used to laugh at me, but, it was all in fun. But you learn real quickly how to enunciate things based on regional locations.
Yes, absolutely.
And you should.
Yes. I mean, you should become a part of the dynamic of where you're living. And I think that you can bring things into it, and people that were there that maybe brought things into it from maybe where they were from, because everybody's from somewhere. And you just, and it's like I say, and I know everybody kind of has their different view of it. We can agree to disagree. And we do on a number of things, and that's okay. Disagree doesn't mean dislike. And not everybody is going to like everything that everybody else says. If we did, wouldn't that be boring? And so we've got to be able to have debate. We've got to be able to have conversations. And that's what I say in my tagline is that, we want to continue this conversation one podcast at a time. That's what we want to do. We need to keep talking, because we all know that when the conversation breaks down, that's when other problems come up. So no, this is great. And I am so happy you're here. And I know that my followers are going to really, really enjoy hearing from you. And I'll just put it out there that you always have an open invitation to come back and talk with us and share with our folks here. And I say that because I want, I want your people to become my people as well. And I definitely know that my people are going to want to become your people as well. And that's very good. I know that, and you're in California, man, Northeast California, but fires and I just saw a thing, that there's record heat warnings for California. And I mean, I'm from California, the SoCal part of it, but definitely a lot of stuff is always going on in California, and fire season is always horrible. And it's, but I know one of the things that I want to kind of get to, I got a couple of things that I want to ask you about specifically, but I think the target one that I know that you and I have talked about, and since we have, Joe and Kamala are definitely in the news, and Joe and Donald are throwing things back at each other as the political game is, and you have a long background in politics. I know you actually you worked in politics actually, and you have certainly a much you worked in it, I lived through it kind of a thing, and it's in California specifically, and I'll let you get into the, what you did and how you kind of came up in it, if you will. But I know we wanted to talk about, I want to hear your breakdown on hashtag Willie Brown. Willie Brown is I won't call him a California icon, but he was and I don't want to say the word player in a negative way, although maybe. But tell me about hashtag Willie Brown. Tell me about Joe and Kamala.
Well, we got to go all the way back a little bit. And I mentioned earlier that I landed out here in 1987 in the state of California. Well, shortly after that, I began my career within the California prison system. And yes, like you said, I started when it was called the California Department of Corrections. No rehabilitation. That came later, thanks to Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger and his big movement within the prison system out here in the state of California. But anyways, long before old Mr. Schwarzenegger came into the picture, yes, I got very actively involved with an organization which is known as the California Correctional Peace Officers Association, which is the bargaining unit, aka union, that represents the correctional peace officers out here in the state of California when it comes to bargaining rights, dealing with the governors and the California legislature. So in a nutshell, that's how I began my political career, if I want to call it that. And it was very fortunate. I had the ability, looking back on it, I'm just going to have to say it. I was identified early amongst some of the leadership, and we did a few things to prove ourselves to be capable of representing the organizations, and we were given the opportunity to politically get involved. Now, that didn't begin until 1995 when I moved and opened up an institution up here in Susanville, California, where we broadcast out and currently reside. And the institution is called High Desert State Prison here in Susanville, California. And then it all began at that point. I got very active on the conservative side. That would be the Republican Party out here in the state of California. And really, the whole point is to represent the issues of peace officers, law and order. So yes, I am a big law and order guy when it comes to what we do as a profession and what our brothers and sisters, first responders do out on the streets, not just in the state of California, but across America. And so as a result, we got involved with all the campaigns, Governor Pete Wilson at the time, all the way up to Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger, and up including currently all the way to Gavin Newsom. I mean, I don't work with the Gavin Newsom side of it, the Jerry Brown side of it, as much as the conservative. That's the beauty and the strength of our union, our organization, is that it did have the structure in place to do the proverbial work both sides of the aisles, the issues, the parties. And so I've became pretty successful on the Republican side with my fellow officers. And then at the same time, you mentioned earlier about the importance of getting along and liking each other. I have fellow officers that were working on the Democrat side, doing the same thing as quote unquote operatives. And it gave me the ability to work with some of the greatest consultants in the state of California. And the California Correctional Peace Officers during its time period, you know, we were definitely what you would call the proverbial 800-pound gorilla going down the hallways of the state capitol in Sacramento. And we were very good and very strong at what we did. And so that is the background foundation that was able to elevate me into different positions, from working on gubernatorial campaigns, congressional campaigns, state legislator campaigns, and of course, regional presidential campaigns up here in Northeastern California. So that's it in a nutshell. That's my background. That's how I became involved. I had the ability to actually work professionally in the industry while at the same time maintaining my peace officer status and my duties and obligations to the profession and to the people of the state of California.
Very cool. Very cool. It's I'd say you've done it all. And when we say that, I'm not trying to bring something new out there for you, because it sometimes seems like when I've seen it all and I've done it all, something new that comes up, and sometimes something new is good. But I know you're really good at what you do, and I can speak to that the High Desert State Prison portion of it. I have been in there as a paramedic when I worked in the Lassen County EMS system. I started out in the Lassen County system, actually operating through the Washoe County system. We had taken over that on an emergency order, and I have been in the High Desert State Prison as a paramedic, and I commend you and all of your brothers and sisters that do that, because that, to me, is some of the scariest times that I've ever had in my my first responder essential worker now career. That's a scary place. prisons are definitely necessary.
You know,
And
it can be, yeah, it can be a very, very violent, and it is a very volatile profession. I mean, don't get me wrong, not every prison is as violent as, say, High Desert State Prison, Pelican Bay, Salinas Valley, some of the more notorious, I guess, institutions for some of the, dare I say, notorious individuals, because, politically correctly now, we don't call them notorious, we call them victims of society. Anyways, we'll get into that point in the conversation. But to get back to hashtag Willie Brown, when we were talking about Willie Brown, during this time period, I had the rare opportunity to meet with, I don't want to say get to know, but be in the same room as Willie Brown. And Willie Brown is definitely a power broker during a time period in the state of California's political history. Speaker of the California State Assembly for many, many, many years. I believe it was early in the 90s, term limits came out. In fact, people would argue, and it would be an interesting debate, but I take the position, because there's a lot of folks that will take the position out here in the state of California. Term limits out here in the state of California were initiated because of Willie Brown, because they couldn't defeat Willie Brown. And Willie Brown had all the power in the legislature. Now, don't get me wrong. When you say he was a player, he was very, very good at what he did. And he was very, very strong and powerful man, regardless, no matter how we look at him. And even today, I think it was a couple of years ago, I had the ability to, I don't want to come across as saying a direct conversation, but be within a conversation around him. And, even for his age at this point, he's pretty sharp. He still knows what he's doing. But all of this friendship came about because of a man named Don Novi. And Don Novi was just the president of the California Correctional Peace Officers Association for many, many years. One would say that he evolved the CCPOA into the political machine that it became during the 90s, early mid 2000s. And of course, it's still around. It's there's other things that are going on. I'm not sure if it has as much strength as it used to have because of a lot of reasons. But during that time, man, it was powerful, powerful, powerful times. So when we go to Kamala Harris, most Californians know the story that I'm going to tell you about when it comes to hashtag Willie Brown. The big question for Kamala Harris is whether or not she's worthy of the honor that she has received with the selection as the vice president, with all of the first categories that come with that selection into the vice presidential nominee with Joe Biden on the Democrat Party.
Okay.
So the history with Kamala Harris is either going to come out or it is not. Most Californians in the Bay Areas really understand who Kamala Harris, which is why Kamala Harris wasn't even polling that well during the presidential race in her home state of California, because of her past history, not because of her being tough as a district attorney, not because she was tough as an attorney general, no, because of her relationship with Willie Brown in order to put her into the positions and what he did for her to advance her career to where she is today. And then, of course, the association with Nancy Pelosi out here in the state of California, which controls all of the Hollywood purses, all the money. And so the way this has been done should be appalling to America. And the way this is being done should be appalling to my fellow Texans out there in my great home state of Texas. Anybody else but Kamala Harris would have been a way better picture. I mean, don't get me wrong, as a conservative and as a Republican operative, yeah, we're pretty happy about that. That should be something that, you can beat up on her a little bit, but you have to have the courage in the business to be able to point this out. But I was more concerned, Jeff, and I think I've made the point on my show, and I think I had the conversation with you because you make comments when I'm doing my Facebook Live. I was more concerned with Val Demings being picked, who was by far somebody way more, what's the word I want to say? deserving of such an honor of being the first Black woman, African-American woman, however we want to say it, to receive that nomination. So that's where the hashtag Willie Brown comes from. So the reality and the bottom line, whether we like it or not, yes, I'll say it directly. I will say it where nobody else wants to say it. Most people realize and believe that Kamala Harris slept her way to the top. And then she was a single woman, which is fine. Don't get me wrong. I know we're going down the road of double standards. And yes, I do acknowledge that double standards exist. And yes, we can debate whether that's right or wrong. But the reality is that Kamala Harris did not get married until she ran for the U.S. Senate. And then we can get into the optics. We can get into all the political debates and concerns and blah, blah, blah. But the reality is that when it comes to Kamala Harris, is she ready to govern? She's a freshman senator from the state of California who literally bought her way to the top, or she was bought by Nancy Pelosi to the top. Absolutely the wrong choice out in the state of California. I'm surprised that Joe Biden actually picked her, but at the same time, not surprised. So whether or not that gets into the forefront of the campaign over the next, couple months is, it doesn't really matter. It doesn't really matter. But the reality is that is this the individual? Is she the individual that we want to possibly be the president of the United States before Joe Biden has completed maybe one, maybe two terms? And it is a credibility issue. But at the same time, definitely most Northern Californians and most conservative Californians are going to say, no, Joe, what did you do? So that's what I mean when I say hashtag Willie Brown. Is she the candidate that represents the Me Too movement? I'm going to say no. And for some of the media out here in the state of California and the national media to refer to Willie Brown as her mentor, then I guess we have to refer to Harvey Weinstein maybe as being a mentor to some of the actresses as they were, doing the casting couch to further their careers. So that's just reality. You know me very well. I have no problem saying, yeah, exactly. I've just got no problem saying it, what people are thinking. And then, of course, we can get into the political aspect of it. And I got to be careful here not to take over your show. And, I mentioned to you that off air a little bit. But the reality is that is she going to bode well within the Black churches of the South? And I'll call it what it is because it is reality. The question is, and normally, politically speaking, now I'm being as objective as I can here today. Some of the issues that we're talking about really are irrelevant amongst the Democrat voters as much as it is very relevant amongst conservative Republican voters. That's just demographics 101. That's just my political science background, my political professional background, identifying demographics in the business, comes into play. And, the question is whether or not, the term Jezebel is going to come out amongst the Bible Belts in the southern states, and whether or not somebody's going to have the courage to play that card amongst the churches within the Bible Belts across America. So, it's all relevant when it comes to demographics and politics. That's the point that hopefully that I'm trying to be as honest as I can. These are some of the things that, Jeff, we talk about on the 503 report that most strategists and most dominant political consultants, this is information that they do not want revealed, to the American voter, because it's important that the American voter, sometimes stays asleep rather than become awakened as far as some of the things that affect them. So yes, I have had the opportunity. I have met with Kamala Harris, a very, very smart lady, without a doubt, very, very articulate lady, and to some degree, very, very nice lady, but definitely not the individual that I think would be worthy to have the title that is now historically bestowed upon her. So that's what I mean when I talk about hashtag Willie Brown, because it's commonly known out here in the state of California, but might not be known across America, might be rejected across America. And then, of course, the proverbial question, does anybody care about it across America?
I think that's great. And I think we're definitely going to see, well, we are definitely going to see how it plays out. Not being a betting man per se, my money, if you will, was actually on Val Demings. I think she was very impressive in the impeachment hearings, which is a whole different issue, but just her law enforcement background, which I'm big on, being the police chief, former police chief of Orlando, Florida. And my money would have also been on Tammy Duckworth, former veteran. I hashtag badass. That woman, I'll tell you, that's my money would have been there, certainly over Kamala too. One of the things that I do when I'm watching a political show or something, I'll Google their background, whatever, and I'll tell my wife, who just cannot stand how much that I'm in politics, and well, that's not fair to say either, because she's very supportive of me, and I'm, let's just say I'm more political than she is, but I'll say, oh, they're a lawyer, and she says they're all lawyers, honey, and I think that's where politics kind of has been for a number of years, is everybody, and not everybody, but a lot are attorneys, and that's quite a background. But we'll see definitely how it plays out there. Joe and President Trump are definitely figuratively lobbing grenades at each other, so we'll see where it goes. The vice presidential debates, I am personally looking forward to as well. I think that Vice President Pence and Kamala Harris will have some interesting conversation. It's people need to make their own mind up and see what's going on. And I'm certainly, obviously, my people know that I voted for President Trump in 2016, and there's some things I've seen that I have changed my mind on, and I think that's one of the good things that we have in this country, is that we are able to change our mind, we are able to speak our mind, and we'll see definitely how it plays out. I think there's much more to come, and we'll kind of see where that goes. You definitely have a background in that, and I know that our folks here in Papa Jeff's America, which is everybody's America, we definitely appreciate your insights here. I wanted to because you had mentioned California and Gavin Newsom and such, and I don't so much want to go there, but what I have taken some heat recently on my Facebook and my social media regarding the situation in Kenosha, Wisconsin. And you have a background in law enforcement. And what's your views on militias? What do you think? I know there's a constitutional background and there's a historical background with militias, but it's 2020. It's not 1776, and I don't want to. I'm kind of and if I don't know if you've noticed it, but if you look at my Facebook, one of my people that's really throwing dirt at me is my own son. That's my middle son, and middle sons are just kind of middle sons. But I posted some things about militias, and what do you think what's your views on militias?
You mentioned it's 2020. It's not 1776, but I like to tout myself. I'm definitely a student of history, and I love history. Once upon a time, I was looking to be a history major when I was in college, and I since changed that over to political science. And it had everything to do with basic economics. What would I be able to do with that education as far as making a living? But some of the things that we're seeing in America, we're seeing that happened in 1920. We're seeing happen maybe in 1860. We're starting to see that maybe started up in 1770. In the 1760s, we're seeing civil unrest for a lot of reasons. And the biggest reason for the civil unrest that we're starting to see, without a doubt, and we'll talk about this, has absolutely everything to do with the governors and the mayors of the states and cities across America shutting down economies. When you have the fifth largest economy out here on the West Coast shut down, then people are going to be left with nothing to do. And a lot of the movements that's going on in the streets as a result of, I want to say, the Antifa movement, more so than the Black Lives Matter movement, is a result of individuals not having a job to go to and not having a classroom to go to with some of these young students and these kids. And so they have nothing else to do but to get out there doing what they are doing. So the militia aspect of it, without a doubt, I'm kind of in a militia part of the state, unofficially. Once upon a time, there was an official group that considered themselves as a militia for the purpose of what the Constitution guarantees with the Second Amendment. And, individuals take that very, very serious. Are we to the point now where militia mobilization is going to be necessary because of the defunding of what we call the law enforcement, which you could probably, historically put in an aspect, the police departments could be considered modern day militia protection versus, say, the true sense of militias as the root comes from our Revolutionary War. So as more and more law enforcement begins to fall off, who's going to protect the people at this point? Who's going to be able to protect a business? Who is the business owner that is going to be? How are you going to be able to protect your home? So as the disruptors, and I can't say I'm protesting anymore, man, because see, once you start going up the streets of a community, you're no longer protesting as it says in the Constitution. You are now becoming a little bit at the criminal level, all the way to a disturbing of the peace. Mm-hmm. Destruction of private property is not protesting against your government. You are a criminal at that point, destroying some other individual's livelihood. So back in the day, as you know, Jeff, throughout history, if you rustled some cattle or you stole a horse, you were hung. Mm-hmm. You were executed because by stealing some cattle and stealing a horse, you actually put some people in danger, livelihood, their ability to be able to travel or to be able to get out of maybe a situation that the horse would get them out of. To safety, to a community, whatever. So the history side of this has got to be applied before we can understand what's going on with a militia movement across America. So when you see the streets being held up and you're hearing the 911 calls out here on the left coast, that would be in the Seattle area, people calling for the police so they can get their car with their children in the back of their car back to wherever it is that they're traveling to, but you don't have the police responding because of these, I refer to them as, the blue state dictators, the blue city dictators, then what are you supposed to do as an individual? How are you supposed to protect your family as an individual? How are you supposed to protect your property as an individual if the cities and the states are failing and that one of their number one obligations as government, which is to, quote unquote, protect the people? Mm-hmm. So when it comes to the militia movements, are we going to start seeing more movement? I think so, for the most part. Does it matter if it's a black militia movement versus a white group militia movement? It can at some point if they are ideologically going against each other. Are we potentially going to see some more violence at the level that we are seeing across America? We will, Jeff, as long as police departments are being defunded. We will, Texas. We will, Houston. If we continue to see the action to prevent individuals not necessarily like myself, but individuals that I work with, being restricted upon doing their job. But what's more important, and I love to talk about this, is the use of force policies across America. I've been talking about the use of force policies, as you know, for several years, probably about when Michael Brown occurred, because we had several other type of shootings that were happening out here in the state of California before the Michael Brown incident in Ferguson. So, the question is, and to get back to your question, what do I think about the militias? Well, the militias are definitely guaranteed in the Constitution. And if America doesn't want to see maybe more mobilization of self-proclaimed militia movements, then you might want to think about refunding your police department so they can go out there and do the job that individuals feel that they may be necessary to backfill when that gap occurs in the name of personal and property protection. As you see, man, I have to sometimes go a long circle around to explain what my positions are in order to have an answer. And I do that all the time on the 503 report. My audience enjoys it, but hopefully we don't go too long and bore yours.
No, I can guarantee you that I am enjoying it, and I know that that my folks here are enjoying it as well. There's definitely a lot to talk about, and in the militia type subject, certainly to the young 17-year-old gentleman from Illinois, he's got a problem, and the law is going to deal with it. There's always concern, was he led astray? Was he a victim to? And I hesitate to use the word victim, but was he? Are these people being radicalized? There's another hot button word. I think that the media needs to be careful of what they put out there, and I agree with you. I think that law enforcement, that police departments need the money that they need to do their job. Obviously, police departments cannot do individual property protection. There's just not enough of them, and that's not particularly. I mean, you have to protect the people because that's what your job description is, but it's just everything has just become, because the country has grown and views have changed, and it's a tough one. And I'm a Second Amendment guy, absolutely. I believe in that. I am concerned about the left, if you will, of the Democrats and what they want to do with gun reform, shall we say, and gun control. Now, the Democratic side says, no, we're not going to take your guns, although sometimes that does come out. I think it was Beto O'Rourke here in Texas said, heck yeah, we're coming for your guns. And I'm paraphrasing, but I don't want that to happen. I do have a concern that, assault type weapons for non-military, what are you going to do with that? You're a hunter? No, so anyway, that's a whole different thing. But I definitely, I appreciate your views on that. And I think you're right. I think that there's always something that's beneath the surface that maybe the media doesn't really want to get to. Is this is happening and and why is it happening? And they don't have time, obviously, on on any of these programs to go into the meat and potatoes thing. And I think that's maybe why we have our Sunday shows that have come on, but they tend to go to the political talking points as well. But anyway, I appreciate your views on that. There's a lot of stuff that's out there, and we could talk for days about it. And I definitely want you to be able to come back, and we can talk about a bunch of other stuff. I did want to take a moment and give you a chance to talk about your music project. I know it's been a little bit delayed because of COVID. What hasn't? I know what you were saying about the protesters with because my family is here. My girls are in online school and high school, and my wife is doing college online, and everybody's here, and it's like, oh my goodness, and what are we going to do? And I know, and the the old term is cabin fever, and I think everybody has that. But tell us about Born American Pride. I'm kind of familiar with what it is, but I want to know more, and I know our folks on the broadcast want to know more. Tell us more about Born American Pride.
Well, once again, I got to go back to the history we're talking about. When I was in the state of Texas growing up as a young kid, when I came out to California during that time period, I'm like every other normal kid growing up, wanting to be a rock and roll star, wanting to be, play music, wanting to become, the next Eddie Van Halen guitar player, type situation. And so, songwriting is something that my father and I had did for a lot of years growing up. And, some of my greatest memories with my father is sitting around, which is kind of ironic because I don't have any pictures. And I was looking for this several years ago, as many days and nights as my father used to and I used to strum guitar together, very, very few pictures that were taken. But the reality is that that's what we did. And so in 1989, we cut 3 songs, and in the recording studio there in Tascadero, California, San Luis Obispo County. And we had a shot. We took them back to Nashville, and we got some interest for the most part, but we didn't get the right interest. We were getting the right deal offers for the most part. And really it came down to me making the decision, to try to head out to Nashville, struggle, do the life of Nashville, or continue with the career that I had already started with the California Department of Corrections. And at that time I met my girl, like you mentioned Lacey earlier, my lovely bride. And I just made a decision that we were going to stick around and just kind of go forward with this career. Well, my mother and my father, my dad's work, he ended up leaving the area, heading back to Texas and all that good stuff. But we corresponded, we had to do it through the mail system, the U.S. postal system. We didn't do it through texting. We didn't do it through Zoom. We just sent it out in the mail, and we would write songs. We'd talk on the phone, landlines, not cell phones. We'd actually have to talk to each other instead of video conference. And we would just go back and forth, and we just wrote. We wrote songs. And the original version of the song Born American Pride was actually recorded in 2012 out here locally. And we wrote that song probably within 2010-ish is when we began to compose that song. And we wrote the song, we recorded the song. I played the song over the cell phone that we had. It wasn't a smartphone, just a cell phone, with my dad. And unfortunately, that was the last song my father heard, because in 2013, he passed away unexpectedly. Mm. And shortly after that, my wife, who was in the profession as well with the California Department of Corrections, right as she began to retire out of the career, we were talking to some great friends of ours, and we were trying to figure out where we wanted to go, maybe to celebrate Lacey's retirement. And it came down to 3 places. Our friends wanted to go to Nashville, Florida Keys, and one other place. And when I heard Nashville, I got to be honest with you. I'm like, man, I don't want to go to Nashville. Been there, done that. Tough town, tough memories, blah, blah, blah. And let's go to Florida Keys. Well, in a nutshell, it came down. We were going to Nashville. So I reluctantly went to Nashville. We showed up a day early before my friends did. And this was somewhere around 2016. And ended up taking the shuttle, staying right there on Broadway, downtown Nashville. Got checked into the hotel, walked around. I was like, okay, I kind of remember where we are. Walked up Broadway, and Jeff, I heard something that I was surprised to hear. I heard the old sound. I heard old country music, not the modern sound that we're talking about today. And I heard these guys playing it in the bars. It's that underground sound. Nashville, old country music was alive. And that's what did it, man. It inspired me. And when we came back, I looked up found a recording studio called Hilltop Studio right there in Madison, Tennessee, which is Nashville. And it's a studio where everybody who was anybody up until, the 90s, maybe mid-90s, recorded their legends. Dolly Parton to Tracy Byrd,
Mm.
And I was just like, you know what? I'm not going to let all these songs die on the proverbial vine. I'm going to take them back. I'm going to record them. I'm going to try to record them the way they should have been recorded. A lot of these songs in the 1990s, early 2000s. And that's what we did. We hired the guys, Brent Mason, all the individuals that were responsible for the 90s movement sound. And we went in the studio and we recorded the song. That's why it sounds a little bit like the 90s. And we did it. And it was just something to do. I was going to play the music on my radio program. That was it. Had no intent of doing anything. But then we got hooked up with a group out in Nashville by luck who kind of believed in the music. And we put together a marketing plan. Like you said, Born American Pride. We trademarked Born American Pride with the United States Trademark Organization. So we own the words. And then, of course, we created a brand and a product to go along with the song, clothing line, as you put it. And we were set to launch. And in fact, if you go to my website, you see it right there, March 2020. Well, what happened in March 2020, man?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's when the COVID thing really began and the economies began to shut down. And so we've made some huge adjustments. But in a nutshell, man, that song, I mean, if you hear the words today, depending on what side of the proverbial aisle you're on, it's almost prophetic. We wrote this song. We began writing the song, years ago. We finalized it in 2010, recorded it in 2013, re-recorded it, restructured it in 2016. And here we are in 2020, almost word for word of what's going on in the streets of America. Mm-hmm. Just unintended. So yes, we're proud of the song. We love the song. It may be offensive to some, and it just may be right on to others. But we've had a little bit of difficulty with the social media marketing. They're being tough with us. We do own the words. Like we said, we trademark Born American Pride. And unfortunately, our concern is all of a sudden to have Born American Pride, is that considered new hate speech in America today amongst social media sites? And it is not. Because really the song is tributed to all of the men and women who died fighting the wars of keeping America free. And that's what the song is about. So, yes, folks, just check me out, Andrew Wellborn. Just Google me, and it'll take you to all the links that you mentioned at the beginning of the show to where you can find me. Like me if you like, follow me if you like. If not, I'm looking forward to talking to all of you folks out there in the future with Papa Jeff's America. That's a great name, by the way. Great title for a show.
Well, thank you. Papa Jeff's kind of operates in his own head, I guess. And welcome to Papa Jeff's America. I am so stoked that you are our premier guest. You're the first, and there's definitely so much more to talk about, and I definitely hope you'll come back. We definitely encourage our folks to check you out, like you said, to Google you, Andrew Wellborn, Born American Pride. Check out the 503 Report as well, guys. 503report.com. He's awesome, and if you follow him, like his Facebook page, he also does his 503 Report. He Facebook Lives. That's what I tend to do, and I'm there, and I like to send in comments while he's actually on the air. I love the back scenes of a radio program, and I should know because I definitely have a face for radio. So
you're looking at one too, man.
you don't have a face for radio, man.
Jeff. Hey, real quick, I'd like to do this real quick because who knows how long it's going to be before I get to talk like this again. One of my proud moments on the 503 Report is when we go back to the election of Donald Trump. During that time period, because obviously I understand how the electoral college works. Nevada was going blue, and the rule is that you can't lose 3 flyover states. You have to pick up one somewhere. Otherwise, that's why the Hillary Clinton campaign was so confident. But during the summer leading up to that election, I always refer to it as the fool's gold of politics. It seems like internal campaigning always turns to Wisconsin.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason is because you have a voting base that's registered to vote that don't show up to vote, but they always poll saying that they support you as a candidate, but they historically have never shown up to the polls, to support those polling. But we were the only that I know of, definitely at the national level, but at least in the local level, we are the only ones that I know of that actually predicted what had to happen for Donald Trump to win in the state of Wisconsin. And it did. And I'd like to tell that story on a future broadcast, just as a point. But we do have that claim to fame. We are digitally recorded. None of the Fox News got it. None of the MSNBC, none of the CNN got it. But on the 503 report, what we said had to happen, happened. And we weren't politically correct about it. Everybody's talking about the silent majority. Well, folks, whether you like it or not, the silent majority happens to be white male voters. And I refer to it as the great white hope had to occur. And I took some heat on it, and I got no problem taking some heat on it because I'm going to be straight up and just tell you what it is, and then you can go from there. But that's what happened in Wisconsin. And that's our claim to fame. We made that prediction. We said that had to happen. It did. And it resulted in President Donald Trump being elected. So anyways.
There you go. And I'm glad you shared that because I know I'm going to be there tomorrow on Friday listening to the 503 report. And I know that my folks here are going to check it out as well. Andrew Wellborn has been our guest, y'all. There it is, Texas, y'all. It's the actual word. Born American Pride. AndrewWellborn.com. Andrew, thanks for coming in. My best to you and your lovely bride, Lacey. Come see us again.
Hey, man, I'd love to. It was fun, and best of luck with your show and anything I can do. Man, I'm here for you, Papa Jeff.
I appreciate it, my friend. Take care. Guys, this has been Andrew Wellborn's with us, and we'll be right back. Thanks for joining us in Papa Jeff's America. Papa Jeff's America is recorded live at OG Studios in Houston, Texas, and is a production of Cameron Communications. Special thanks and musical credit to Texas Radio Fish from Galveston County, Texas. You can find their music online at ccmixter.org. Email us your suggestions and comments to papajeffpodcast@gmail.com. You can also text or call us at 281-940-6980. Please subscribe to our podcast at papajeffpodcast.buzzsprout.com or wherever you get your podcasts. Follow us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and soon our new YouTube channel. Thanks again for joining us. We're looking forward to seeing you next time when we continue the conversation, one podcast at a time.